Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Total Saints podcast and the second in our mini-series of World Cup TSP pods. We're once again going to the heart of all things Saints FC and Qatar 2022. We're live streaming this on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter and Twitch, so if you're watching along tonight, please do post your questions and comments as we go. My name is Ben Stanfield and joining me this week in no particular order are the Daily Echo Saints journalist Alfie House, League One -10 blog's lead scribbler Glenn Delacour, and one of our brilliant long-time TSP patrons, Ed Busy. Speaking of TSP patrons, before we get going, a massive thank you to all of you for continuing to support this podcast. While we appreciate times are becoming increasingly tough, you remain pivotal to TSP's continuation, so thanks to all of you. We're also delighted to once again have NordVPN sponsoring this week's episode. Did you know that NordVPN is the fastest VPN on the market? Well, it's true. If you don't know what a VPN, virtual private network, is, it can do so much for you. From keeping your data secure on public Wi-Fi, giving you access to the global internet, and even allowing you to access your favorite streaming websites from anywhere in the world, giving you much more content to enjoy. You can grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/totalsaints, where you'll get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan plus 4 months for free. So why not give it a go? Even better, it's all completely risk-free as Nord have a 30-day money-back guarantee. Further details, including that link just mentioned, can be found in the show notes for the podcast as well as the YouTube description. Right, coming up on this week's podcast, England cruise past Senegal to continue their World Cup journey. A 19-year-old superstar again shines brightly, and France wait in the quarterfinals. And closer to home, we've the latest on Saints, including the men's team heading out to Spain for some sun, sea, sand and football. Underpinned by our global patrons, this is TSP World Cup Special, Episode 2. Alfie, before we get going into some of the nitty-gritty around the round of 16 and quarterfinals, let's briefly reflect on what's happened so far. What have you made of the World Cup overall?
To be fair, I think it's been a really good tournament. Obviously, a lot was said about the World Cup in the build-up to it, whether it should be there and all these kind of things. But I think the football itself has been good. I would say that there hasn't really been, other than the Germany and Spain group, I've not been too surprised by what's happened, to be honest. I think Germany going out was obviously a good laugh, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But I think all the favourites in the knockout rounds, especially so far, have won their games. And from an England perspective, we haven't done anything that I didn't think we would do, but what we have done, I've been really pleased by. I think it's been a good tournament. To be fair, they put on a decent lot of football, and I've enjoyed it a lot.
Excellent. You're spot on, Alfie. I couldn't get too far into the pod without us bringing up Germany. Glenn, obviously there were two sort of significant European exits at the group stage. As I say, reflecting back on kind of what's happened before we do start speaking about England, Germany and Belgium both going out of the group stage. Were you surprised to see sort of one or both of them go out, given the opposition in their groups as well as the talents in their squad?
I think given the opposition in their groups, I was surprised to see them both go out. I think Japan have been better than I thought they'd be. For Germany to come third behind them was amusing. Belgium, I'm not surprised wasn't at all surprised they're not up to much, but I was surprised they didn't get out of that group. But they were dismal. You could see it from the first 20 minutes of their first game against Canada. No legs in the team, didn't look to be playing for each other. Manager's a complete fraud, always has been. And they had some fantastic players. Those players 4 or 5 years ago, that was their chance, and they didn't get over the line then. But when you look at it now, it's quite sad actually to see Eden Hazard the way he is now, because he was so good. When he was at Chelsea, and he looks about as fit as me at the moment. And Lukaku, I know, was coming back off an injury, a recent injury, but he wasn't the worst. You go into a tournament where your centre halves are 34 and 35, then you're always going to be struggling. So, but it was quite funny to watch them sort of implode and all start arguing with each other, and it was like a good impression of the Dutch at previous tournaments where they've all got on each other. But Germany, apart from the fact that we had a player in their squad,
the only real sadness,
and he didn't get on the pitch, I don't think, did he?
Yeah, well, there you go. Then that's where they went wrong.
Yeah, obviously. But it's always fun if you've been watching international football for as long as I have, and the amount of pain that Germany have inflicted on England over the years. it's always amusing when Germany don't do particularly well. So I was watching their players crying on the pitch at the end, and I'm thinking, do I feel sorry for him? No, I don't. No, I don't. So no, Germany can go home and have one of their rebuilds, but no doubt, come the Euros in 2 years' time, they'll probably be one of the favourites and right back on it.
Yeah.
I do feel sorry for Jamal Musiala, who could have just picked England and could have been part of a potentially winning team.
I know, and judging by the 4 smiles on the screens, there's not a lot of sympathy around, other than, as you say, for Bella Kotchap. But Ed, look, firstly, welcome back to TSP. Lovely to have you here tonight. Thanks for joining us. Secondly, I know Martin sort of briefly touched on some of the ex-Saints at the World Cup in last week's pod, Buffal, De Vereld, etc., etc. I just wanted to take a moment to kind of chat about Japan, being led by a sort of fantastic true Saint. I think we'd all call him that, Maya Yoshida. Won their group. I was thinking about this today, almost in sort of true Saint style, really, because they beat the 2 big sides, Germany and Spain, and then managed to lose to the whipping boys, Costa Rica. It was very Saints-esque, as I say. Obviously, it's ended a bit disappointingly today with the penalty shootout loss. But just in terms of Maya and sort of how you've seen him through the tournament, because I know you enjoy watching your football, what have you made of Japan and Maya Yoshida?
Oh, I think Japan have probably been the surprise package to get out of that group. Is an amazing achievement, really. But I think when you talk about Maya, and I'm sure that Glenn will say the same. I mean, he was a great servant to our football club anyway, and I know he's a bit of a figurehead in the fan base, and I think everyone respects him for what he did for the area in Southampton in general, and he always. He didn't always play the best, I know, but he always gave his all. And to be fair, he's played pretty well in this World Cup. Unlucky today. I mean, Japan were just dreadful in the shootout, unfortunately for them. It wasn't interesting to see 2 of our ex-players in the middle of the pitch before the penalties were taken. One who we've got fond memories of, and one that we haven't.
Yeah, one's a true Saint and one's a headless Saint. Yeah, you're right. I think the only thing I was glad about was that it wasn't Lovren walking past him to take the winning penalty. But there we go. But yeah, Mike Byers, who's watching, said Yoshida had a great World Cup till his penalty today. I must also give Australia a quick shout out for their excellent performance at the World Cup. Obviously, we're pressed for time, so we're not going to speak about every single nation at the World Cup. But I do know that we have a lot of Aussie Saints who listen to the pod, and we also have some patrons based down there as well. So great to see them do really well at the World Cup and hopefully inspire the next generation of Aussie footballers. Obviously, I mean proper football when I say that. Alfie, just lastly, before we chat about England versus Senegal, again, Martin and the chats were talking about Salasu against Ronaldo last week, the penalty. Obviously, I thought it'd just be good to talk about Sally. He had a fantastic performance against South Korea. I know they went out, but he also got a goal. And from a Saints point of view and from his point of view, nice to have a sort of World Cup strike that kind of means something to us.
Yeah, and he was definitely unlucky, I think, with the Ronaldo incident, with the whole penalty, which I'm sure you spoke about last week. But I thought, again, he did really well, Sally. And he's almost unfortunate. It seems like, although he plays very well almost every time I watch him, bar the occasional mistake, he's always in a defence that seems to ship loads of goals, which, there's got to be a causation or correlation there at some point. But unfortunately for him, they did go out. I thought he played really well. It stood up to the test. I watched the goal in London. I was actually on a couple of days away, and when he got it, it's obviously class for him. Given that Armel Bolakocha didn't get on the pitch and there was nobody else there, it was nice to have that Saints representative, you say. He's waited so long to play for Ghana. He had 3 or 4 call-ups before he's sort of finally accepted it. And, of course, you're going to accept it before the World Cup, aren't you? Why would you turn that opportunity down? And I think he gave a good account for himself and probably put another 0 or maybe on the price.
Yeah, let's not hope that doesn't happen. But
actually,
okay.
Actually, that's worth mentioning. That was amusing as well. I know they lost to Uruguay, but Luis Suarez crying his way out of the tournament was a beautiful thing.
Glorious.
As well. Absolutely, right up there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, cool. Well, moving on to chat about England's round of 16 game against Senegal. Then the 3 Lions, of course, securing victory by 3-0. Ed, ultimately, knockout football's all about winning, isn't it? It's not necessarily about the performance, and in the end, it was very comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I think we probably all sat there for 35 minutes wondering, well, was this going to be a Cameroon of a few years back? And it turned out to be far easier than it was, than it started. And the goal made a huge difference, because the minute that goal went in, you just saw the Senegalese players. Their heads went down. They lost their shape. And England then just, to be fair to England, they took their chances really well. and they moved the ball okay. I mean, England aren't always the most pleasing to watch or pleasing to the eye, but I thought for half an hour they played some pretty good football.
Yeah, no, totally. And Alfie, from the sort of starting lineup point of view, obviously Marcus Rashford had a really good game against Wales last week with his 2 goals and his man of the match and that sort of thing. Were you surprised to see him sort of drop out? I know Saka scored, and we'll obviously come on to that in a bit, but were you surprised to see Rashford drop out?
Maybe I was surprised, but I didn't disagree with the decision. I think Rashford's also got 3 goals in the tournament, which is more than most players will get. But both of his finishes against Wales, the keeper probably could have done a little bit better. You've got to be the one to put it in, and fair play he did. First touch against Iran as well, scored. But I think everyone can see that Saka and Foden are better players than Rashford, and Rashford's still a good option then to have off the bench. So if you've got Foden and Saka in there, and both of them have shown that they're excellent, and Saka's never really let England down. Obviously, people will point to the penalty, but that's just a 12-yard spot kick. But he's never really let England down, and I was actually quite pleased that Southgate decided to put those 2 in. Yeah.
And Glenn, as Ed was sort of mentioning there, that first 35 minutes, certainly a pretty tough watch. Obviously, you've got to try and get through those periods, as we all know, in club and international football. But a couple of close scares from Senegal and a really big save, almost pretty much before we scored, from Jordan Pickford.
Yeah, I mean, Pickford, for all his, people tend to not like him too much for the way he carries on, when he's playing against your team and stuff like that. But he has been an excellent goalkeeper for England, and he's got 50 caps now, and you can't knock him really. He pulls out the big saves, when they're needed, and at 0-0 in the last 16 game, that was needed. If that goes in, then who knows how the rest of the game pans out. And as you just said, it became apparent how important it was straight away, because 10 minutes later the game was over. We'd scored the 2 goals, and Senegal basically fell to bits, and they kind of joined a slightly strange thing that I've seen at this World Cup from a couple of teams who have basically just whimpered out. They've not gone down really going for it. Senegal there. I thought Poland were like that. I thought Wales were like that. There was no real fight. There was nothing. It's just like they kind of accepted their fate rather than going for it. You might as well get beat 5-0 as 2-0 in what is a knockout game. Like Saints do. Go for it. Get hammered.
I was interested to know what everybody thought about the refereeing at the World Cup, because I think the refereeing has been superb this time around. And I don't know whether everybody else has noticed it, but have you noticed how a large majority of the diving has stopped because just not getting anything? I mean, the refs. I mean, how no Senegalese player was booked yesterday in that first hour, I don't know. It was the last 5 minutes when the first yellow card was shown. But what I would say is that it's really stopped all that diving around looking for free kicks. It's get up and get on with the game, and it's like a breath of fresh air, really.
It's interesting that the amount of extra time that's being played at the end of each half seems to have settled down a little bit now as well. So maybe players are getting the message. I've certainly noticed less time wasting in the last game, probably the games over the last 4 or 5 days, which is a good thing. But yeah, I largely agree. The refereeing has been good, but I did think the ref could have got his card out a little bit earlier in the England Senegal game. There was some real agricultural stuff going on. Players had passed the ball, a couple of seconds had gone by, and then they got launched up in the air, and that sort of thing. It has to be a booking, no matter how lenient you're trying to be.
I've enjoyed one referee in particular. I think he did the game today between Croatia and Japan, but he also did the Cameroon-Brazil game, was it, where Abubakar scored at the last minute of the game and it took his shirt off, got a second yellow. And I enjoyed that as he administered that red card, they were both sort of laughing and shaking hands and stuff. It was quite a nice moment.
What a way to go.
You better hope your team doesn't go through now, otherwise you're going to regret that. But
totally. And I have to say, I thought from a non-biased point of view, I thought Kyle Walker was pretty lucky to get away with that yellow. I know they keep going on about England being the only team not to have a yellow card, but I thought he was good. But the only thing about the time, and I know the guys were talking about it last week, you sort of, it's not good for the diet, is it? Because it's like 24 minutes. You think, I can go and get another beer and some more chocolate or something like that. And it's, I think we need to get back to like 3 or 4 minutes of injury time, I think. But look, Ed, I mean, obviously the opening goal kind of came from our first proper attack. Jude Bellingham bursting onto Harry Kane's pass and squaring to Jordan Henderson. I have to say publicly, I'm not a massive fan of Jordan Henderson, probably because of who he plays for. But I know Steve was talking about how pivotal he was against Wales and USA last week, and I thought he had a really good game against Senegal, and obviously that goal kind of capped it.
Yeah, and he's been getting a lot of stick from Liverpool fans over the last 3 or 4 months since the season started. I think they've been very critical of how slow and pedestrian he's been. Perhaps he hasn't been fit, I don't know. But to be fair, I mean, he covered so much ground yesterday in that game, and to get up there and score that goal, and he's you see him all over the pitch, and I'm not always a big fan, and I know other managers, Alex Ferguson in particular, have been very scathing about him as a player, but I thought he had a super game yesterday. Really one of the better players on the pitch.
It's about making the midfield three tick, isn't it? It's not about individual players. You could maybe pick another player and say he's a better individual player than Jordan Henderson is, but it's about what he brings out of Bellingham, how well he plays himself, knowing that Declan Rice is behind him. And he wouldn't have made that run usually in an England shirt that ended up in that first goal, because he's usually been told to park himself in front of the back four. And that will probably happen against France. He'll get told to park himself in front of the back four. But yeah, I totally agree with Ed. I echo every word, really, that I've never been the biggest fan of him, but I've realised this tournament how, what's the choice? Mason Mount played in the midfield three in the first two games and was poor, really poor. And against America in particular, that midfield just completely failed to function. So that's why he's brought Henderson in. If you don't play Henderson, then you play Calvin Phillips, who is not been fit, so he's not going to be sharp, and he's a very, very defensive player. He wouldn't have made that run to score that goal. So as far as I can see, that Henderson stays in the team, and he thoroughly deserves to.
I think Declan Rice makes Jordan Henderson a better player. I think Declan Rice is such a good. I mean, he doesn't appear to do a lot. Perhaps that's why he's so good, but he actually is an incredibly intelligent, good footballer, and he plays that role sitting in front of the back three or four, whatever you're playing, and gives that protection, but also gives Jordan Henderson a lot more time on the ball than he ordinarily gets in the position that he plays, and that of course then frees up Bellingham in a lot more space, because they almost marked him out of the game for the first half an hour. And the minute that first goal went in, everything freed up, and I thought they complemented each other really well.
Yeah, it's that energy as well, isn't it? I mean, I heard him talking. I think it was before they played Frankfurt in the semi-final of the Europa League, and he was talking about the fact that he played, I don't know, I'm guessing here, but I think 80 games the season before or something like that with England, and then West Ham and Europa, and it's just his energy as well. Eddie just kind of keeps going and going, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think he's a great footballer. I mean, you can see why they're talking about him going, for 100 million plus at the end of the season. I'm sure West Ham are going to have to sell Rice at some point. He'll end up at Liverpool, City, one of those teams, and I think he deserves to play in a team like that. I think he's that good. I really do.
Yeah. Alfie, the second goal came along perfect timing, really, didn't it? Right on half time. We were talking earlier about Senegal's belief, and it kind of sort of, pretty much killed that off. Again, Jude Bellingham, the architect, winning it, I think, pretty much on the edge of the area, bursting forward, passing it to Foden. First time Harry Kane. They were talking, I think, in the commentary that he hadn't scored, was it for 6 World Cup games or something like that? So I may be wrong, but I think, again, good to see him get on the score sheet, and that's kind of been, I know England are the top scorers at the competition, but that's been one of the interesting features as well. The goals are really being spread around the side.
They have been, but now Harry Kane, I believe, he's the England's leading all-time tournament goal scorer. I believe I saw that.
You look like you're reading that, so I'm going to say yes.
No, I'm not reading. I promise you. You three are on my screen. That is what it is. But I believe that's what it is. It's because obviously he got 5 or so at the World Cup, or maybe 6. I can't remember. And then he also scored a few in the Euros. So no English players ever scored more than him at tournaments. And look, again, Glenn sort of alluded to it earlier. It's about making things tick in midfield. And I think Harry Kane, to be fair, although he had a little bit of an episode, I think, was it in the Euros or was it the World Cup, where he was coming a little bit too deep and it wasn't quite working.
Yeah,
he's right up there now, and he is making things tick. You've got 3 assists already. The balls are playing through him, and the runners in behind, which is one of the things that Rashford's really good at. Actually, when Rashford does come in, is the runs in behind Harry Kane. But I was going to ask you. I don't know, we haven't got unlimited time, but I wanted to ask you, chaps, how much does tournament football influence the way you view a player? Because when you're talking about Jordan Henderson there, Glenn, I mean, I didn't rate Jordan Henderson at all until the 2018 World Cup, and I saw him play for England. And I was like, my eyes were just opened. I've been neglecting this player for however many years, and I love tournament players like Harry Maguire, all these guys that turn up for us. I just love it.
It's an interesting one because obviously you're a supporter of the team that he plays for 4 weeks or whatever, whereas usually you're not. So when he's playing for Liverpool, you're just looking at him in the context of being Jurgen Klopp's mouthpiece, and you're looking at him being their captain, being incredibly irritating, and one of those players who always squares up to one of yours when it gets a bit feisty. So you don't like him, but the game's over the years has been full of players like that who you hate them when they're playing against you, but if they're on your team, then you think they're great. I mean, going back donkey's years, Terry Hurlock, when he played for Millwall, you just could despise the guy, but then he signed for us and you think, oh, actually he's great when he's on your team. The game's always been full of characters like that, but yeah, you do look at them through more favorable eyes. So maybe that's a lesson to everybody: put your prejudices aside a little bit, and then maybe you will find enlightenment.
Crikey, this has got deep very quickly.
Absolutely. Good, that one.
Glenn, I wanted to discuss Jude Bellingham. I think almost leading on from that point there, I've read a lot, I've seen a lot. I don't watch German football religiously like maybe Steve does. I know Steve follows Borussia Dortmund, but you hear a lot about Jude Bellingham. 19 years old. I'm not sure if you can remember what you were doing when you're 19. I certainly can't.
Drinking.
But I mean, it's evident from, again, watching this World Cup, he's got to be one of the first names on the team sheet at the moment. You just watch his energy and his ability and, clearly how much it means to him at 19. I mean, he's literally got the world at his feet, hasn't he?
He absolutely has, and also he's playing one of the toughest positions on the pitch as well, as a youngster, and he's been absolutely tremendous in these games so far. I must admit, before the tournament, I watched him play in a couple of the friendlies that England had, and England weren't playing well. With those Nations Leagues games where we weren't great, and I got a bit frustrated with him, to be honest, because I thought, he looks good, and then he'll get to the edge of the penalty area and nothing will happen. He hadn't scored a goal before the tournament, and then he's come into this tournament, and it's, you could tell there was a player in there, but my word, since this tournament's kicked off, it's difficult for a player to play their way into Gareth Southgate's starting lineup because it really hasn't changed much over the years. But he's gone from being someone we might give 10 minutes to at the end, to now he's a guaranteed starter. And I hope he doesn't, but if he does decide to change the team for the French game and, put an extra centre half in there, it 100% will not be Bellingham that gets left out. No. So, he just seems to be able to do everything. He can stick a foot in, and he can, he can make tackles, and he also drives forward, can go past people, can pick a pass out, can score a goal. There's nothing. There doesn't appear to be any obvious weaknesses in his game.
Yep.
The only thing we will get tired of is hearing about which Premier League, Super League club is going to sign him. And he's already at. He's already. Well, I don't think so.
Oh, he's best mates with Jordan Henderson. Did you see that celebration? They
signed maybe, but I think the amount of money. I don't know what his contract situation is and whether his age is a bearing on this, but the amount of money it's going to cost, he's going to be out of the reach of probably 3 of the 6 Super League clubs that we've got in this country. So it will be interesting, but it will get slightly tiresome.
Adam Lallana was best mates with Jordan Henderson, Alfie, and they got rid of him, so you never know.
Let's hope. I think Jude might be slightly better.
I think it's refreshing to see someone who just is enjoying their football, frankly. I think we've seen so many good, gifted footballers. Even just good, not even excellent footballers. Dele Alli's a prime example of someone who is a talented footballer, and he's just ended up on a scrap heap. And I just look at Bellingham, and I think he's an intelligent young man. He's obviously loves his football. He's enjoying playing. He's not playing in our league, but the Bundesliga is a strong physical league, a bit like ours. And wherever he goes, I just hope he doesn't lose the passion and wanting to do well, which clearly he is showing on the pitch, because he plays with a smile on his face. It's actually refreshing. It's refreshing to see.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And just finally on that, then Ed, I was thinking, obviously the third goal was Bukayo Saka. You mentioned earlier, sort of, that disgusting abuse he got after the Euros. Again, for me, someone that I sort of see in an Arsenal shirt, and I think what a talented young player. And then when he's playing for England, you almost want him to do well, and that's the exciting thing for us, I think, as English fans, isn't it? The likes of Bellingham, the likes of Saka, the likes of Phil Foden. I mean, I think Steve said here, you've almost got 2-3 more World Cups of these guys around, that we can enjoy in an England shirt.
Yeah, and I thought Foden made the point yesterday when he was interviewed after the game, when he said, it's about time I started replicating my form for my club, for my country. He hasn't really, maybe he hasn't had as many chances as he could have done, but I do think, yes, I think the last couple of games he's stepped up. I think he's found it was a great cross from him from that left-hand side for the third goal. And I think you're starting to see, by actually Southgate having confidence in playing him, that the more you play him, the better he's going to get. And you look at England's team, and I know that France are, arguably probably a little bit favourites to win this game at the weekend, but we've got an awful lot more on our bench. I think we've got a lot more depth in our squad. And if we can just hold on to their 2 or 3 key players, I think we've got a really good chance. And I think the youngsters, they're not afraid. And I think that's what's going to be so important in this game.
100%. Alfie, just finally on the England-Senegal game then, before I sort of move on to the France game. Of course, they played the entire World Cup without their talisman, and we're talking about a lot of ex-Saints tonight. Unfortunately, Sadio couldn't be part of the World Cup. Do you think that's kind of made their achievements of getting through to the round of 16 and giving England a decent fight for the first half an hour? Admittedly, after that, they fell apart. But, do you feel like they've almost sort of achieved above and beyond what they might have if he had been in the side?
Yeah, look, they had a group that was on paper probably relatively favourable. Obviously, the Netherlands were a really tough side, but you look at Qatar, Asian champions, and Ecuador were actually a very good side. So I think they did well to traverse that group in the way they did. And then against England, they were also missing both of their defensive midfielders as well, which obviously didn't get spoken about. But Idrissa Gueye and another player whose name I can't remember were both out. And like you said, they still gave us a game. And it would have been really good to see Sadio Mane play, because having sort of led them to the African Cup and sort of hitting that check mark, to then be able to come to the World Cup and show what he can do, even though he's 31 years old, was a miss. But, I think those kind of things can inspire players as well. If your talisman is out, then you want to deliver, don't you? You want to, if Harry Kane was out for the final of the World Cup or something, then everybody else is going to step up an extra 1 or 2%, because you have to deliver for your captain, your talisman.
Yeah. No, fair point. Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, next up for England is Didier Deschamps' French side next Saturday at 7 p.m. UK time. Glenn, defending champs, of course. Do we see France as the main favourites for the Cup currently?
France and Brazil.
Yeah, Brazil are kind of falling up, aren't they?
I was going to say, Mike Lyers has sent a message going, watching Brazil tonight, they're on fire. So sounds like it's
Yeah, France and Brazil have looked the best 2 sides since the opening game. And England have always been good at beating teams who are ranked lower than us. Basically, we come unstuck when we play against the traditional big countries and teams that work incredibly hard, like America did. So I refuse to get too carried away about England at the moment, because we haven't played anybody.
It's the first real test, isn't it?
Yeah, we haven't played anyone who is a potential winner of this tournament at all. So we're now playing probably the toughest team we could play at this stage in France. They are an excellent side. They are very well organised. Not only that, they've got that sprinkling of magic, similar to ourselves, but they've got a slightly better sprinkling of magic. I mean, Mbappe, there's a lot written about him in, to do with his personality and the way he behaves at PSG and all that sort of stuff. But on the pitch, the guy is ridiculous. He's ridiculous. I mean, we're talking about Bellingham having everything, but Mbappe's got it and more. He's just mad. There was one cross he put in one game where he just absolutely did the defender, did the right back, and then it was the way he was looking up whilst he was going past the defender and just clipped it to the back post, and I think Giroud headed it in, and it was just a ridiculous goal. Just a supremely talented player, probably on current form the best player in the world on what I've seen. So we got to stop him. But ironically, I think I think the problems are going to come on the other side. That Shaw and Maguire worry me slightly, and they'll be up against Dembele on the right hand side, and Griezmann kind of floats around that area as well. So that'll be where I think the main problem will come. And I just hope that Gareth Southgate has got his big boy pants on, and we play the same team, same formation that we had. Because if we go to a 3 at the back formation, and who you bringing in, either Trippier or Eric Dyer or someone like that, and we get beat, then we might as well have got beat having a go. And I think our strength is going forward. If France have got a weakness, it's the defensive midfield side of things and the defence. So we have to get at them, and I just hope we trust our defenders and goalkeeper to do a decent job. But it's going to be very, very difficult to stop France from scoring over 90 minutes. So we have to have some attacking threat. We can't do what Southgate has done in the past and play 5 at the back, 2 holding midfielders, and then a big gap. And then, and then Harry Kane. It's just, you're not going to win the game like that. So I just hope we approach it in a positive way.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Ed, isn't it? I think Glenn's spot on. It's a different challenge. We're going, with all due respect, from facing Sheffield United and a Watford striker to the likes of Mbappe, Giroud, Griezmann, Dembele. I mean, it's a different class of player.
Oh, look, I think we all know that, and I think it doesn't do us any harm to be, not the favourites to win that game. I think, we in the past World Cups or major tournaments, we've already performed quite well against the better teams in these games. We haven't always won them. We've lost on penalties, or we've lost by the odd goal. I don't think there will be any lack of trying or effort. And I think if you get into the French, I think there is the potential there for the French to have a little bit of a moan and a bit of infighting within the team. I think there's quite a lot of individuals in there. I don't think Giroud is the best striker in the world, but he gets great service from those wide players. If you're saying that Giroud is your number one striker, I mean, that's not anything to be particularly scared about. However, we are renowned for missing opportunities, and that does worry me, because we need to take every opportunity we get Saturday. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Alfie, isn't it? I suppose if you look at both ends of the pitch, we can't play for 35 minutes like we did against Senegal, because we will get punished. Yeah. But at the other end, as we well know, we watched Spurs long enough. Hugo Lloris has got a mistake in him. Varane's obviously just come back into the side, haven't been injured. The left back is replacing, I think, his brother who was out injured. It's not necessarily their back five isn't necessarily their strongest back five.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair, we were all a little bit concerned going back a couple of months after the Nations League isn't important, but we didn't play very well. And I actually think that might have been a very important wake-up call for Gareth Southgate in a few things. And I think that one of those things that it may lead to is that the system he is currently playing now, in my opinion, is the best fit to beat France on Saturday. I really think it is, not only because it gives us that attacking opportunity, and we don't sit back, like you say, with Glenn and like Ed mentioned, bringing Eric Dyer on and just losing 1-0 pointlessly. Saka on that right-hand side is going to be able to help out Kyle Walker with Teo Hernandez. He's a disciplined player. Although he's an attacking player, and that's what he should be doing, he will be helping out on that right-hand side, and that will just free up Kyle Walker a little bit, just to focus on Kylian Mbappe. Jordan Henderson, the right-hand side of that midfield, sat a little bit deeper. We don't want to see Bellingham have to come back and fill in, but if Henderson's going to be able to sort of nip over to that side where Mbappe is and help Kyle Walker out, Bellingham comes in a little bit more. You just have that security, and you can pick their targets, and you can nullify them and still have that attacking going forward. I mean, Phil Foden will always hopefully create chances. I say hopefully. Benjamin Pavard seems to play very well for France. I mean, no one's ever watched him play a club game, but he turns out for them every single week for their country. So I think that, and Southgate will hopefully have realised now that this is the best way to do it. And like Glenn says, you don't need to go to the 5, although we've been successful with that against bigger teams on occasion.
Yeah. In a word then, Glenn, are we going to get through against France?
I think, in a word, yeah, why not?
I think you've already used too many.
I think, it could be a penalties job.
Yeah.
I think we talked about England not having the most difficult opposition in World Cup so far, but I equally don't think France have played anything particularly exceptional. And so, I think you have to take it as it is. I think both teams, this is going to be their first real test. And I don't think anybody wants to play England, just like nobody.
As you say, they'll be as worried of us, Ed, won't they? So, yeah,
of course. Yeah. Nothing to be afraid of. Yeah. Rather, like Glenn said earlier, I think it's better go out having a go than it is to just whimper a 1-0 or a 2-1 loss and think, oh, I wish we'd had a go and been a bit, perhaps.
Yeah, because that's what we've done in the last 2 tournaments. Even though we've got to a final and a semi-final, in both those games, though we've done very well to get to that stage, we've kind of just wimped out at the at the end, and we don't want another exit like that.
It's a Southgate failing, unfortunately.
Yeah, I see encouraging signs that he's learning. That he's learned, and we haven't lost the things that we're good at, which is dispatching the the not so great teams, and hopefully he goes for it a little bit in this game on Saturday.
You alluded to earlier, Glenn, like the fact that Jude Bellingham has played himself into the team so comfortably. Now, Phil Foden's done the same thing. Although, of course, the performance is unbelievable, Gareth Southgate still has to accept that and put them in, and he has done. And I think they're little things we can see that he's learning. He's seeing these young players. You can trust them. They are better than what Mason Mount that was there. Even Raheem Sterling, although admittedly Raheem Sterling might well have started on the weekend and sadly had to go home for personal reasons. I think I probably would have started Phil Foden and maybe Gareth Wood as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've not been the biggest Raheem fan. His goal output has been good, but his overall play, I feel, has held England back a little bit over the last certainly the last sort of year or so. So I wasn't surprised that he got left out of the the Wales game. And
it's no coincidence that he's lost his form since he left Man City. Let's be honest. I mean, he just hasn't looked the same player at Chelsea. He might have done for the first couple of games, but I think that's a big thing.
It's a perfect segue into the fact that the only thing he's done this season probably is score against Saints. So we could end up with 10 minutes here talking about Saints. So nicely done, guys. All right, then. Well, it'll be interesting to see how that goes on Saturday against France. But to finish up, a quick look at what's going on, or not necessarily on the Saints side of things at the moment. Alfie, it's Monday recording. Saints have headed out to Andalusia today for a week of sort of warm weather training with Nathan Jones. From your point of view and what you've heard, what are they hoping to get out of that, apart from a nice winter tan, of course?
There's going to be no winter tan, I don't think, because I looked at the weather a couple of days ago, and certainly from the video of them touching down, it was raining, or there was certainly water on the floor. So not so much a warm weather camp in the south of Spain at the moment, unfortunately. But I think everybody knows what they want to get out of it. It's as simple as just bonding, getting to know the manager's methods. Everybody is there, apart from Mohamed Salah's to Bella Kotchap, so it's a full squad. Tino Livramento, Kyle Walker-Peters are both there. Livramento pictured in training, which is obviously fantastic. It's just a chance for him to get to know these guys. And there's a load of young players as well, like Ryan Finnegan's there, who's somebody who had a first-team chance a couple of years ago, wasn't it? But ever since then, he's sort of had to wait a little bit. And, he's there, Jimmy J. Morgan, Lewis Payne, Nico Lawrence, a couple of these guys that maybe we'll see in the EFL Cup game. It's just all about getting to know his ways. And I've spoken to Terry Skiverton, who was somebody who worked with Nathan Jones as his manager at Yeovil Town. He told me a lot of things about his diet, his Spanish diet and stuff like that. He lived in Numancia for a little bit of time, so I'm not surprised that he's chosen Spain as the eventual location. I think, it'd be interesting to see what they do. It's just a shame that there's no friendlies that have been seemingly organised. I know they played behind closed doors against Bristol City, but it'd have been good to maybe watch a streamed match or see some kind of 11v11.
Yeah, I can see it now that some of the lads are just dos cerveza por favor in it, and he's teaching them a bit more Spanish and all that sort of thing now. So, Ed, it feels like quite a while ago since it happened, and obviously it's still a couple of weeks until Saints play again. But everyone will probably know, for those that have heard you on the pod before, you've been a Saints fan a long, long time. What have you made of sort of the Ralph out, Nathan Jones in situation?
I think the Ralph out thing was probably 6 months, a year too late, in my opinion. I don't know what anybody else thought, but I think we saw the last press conference with Ralph before he lost his job, or before he decided to leave, or however it happened. And I could just see a man who's was dejected, and I think we all agreed that they finally put him out of his misery. I think Ralph's brought some good things. I think that if Ralph had carried on the way he'd started, which was to play the high press, and to continue the way that we played with that high energy and the fitness, I think, he would have probably lasted a bit longer. But I think there was so many mixed. I don't think he knew how to, what his best side was, what his best lineup was, how his formation was going to work. And I think that the best will in the world, the last few weeks, and I don't miss any games. I've noticed our lack of fitness. We're not competitive enough. We don't press. Ward-Prowse is wasted in the middle of the park, mainly because Lavia was injured. But there just seems to be there's no central core to the team. And, and I think so him now going, and my understanding is that fitness is going to be a big issue with Nathan Jones. I don't think anybody's going to be, put it this way, I don't think you're going to see the type of football we've been watching over the last year.
There's no dos cerveza, por favors.
No. I don't think, as nice as Nathan Jones appears, I don't think he falls gladly. So I think we're going to be seeing a high pressing, hard working team. It may not win us, but I think it should. I hope it will be enough. And there's enough good in that team to not be in that bottom 3/5, in my opinion. I'm a Saints fan, so I will be a bit biased, but I am a realist, and I do honestly believe there's enough there to comfortably stay up this year, because there's got to be 3 worse teams than us. There's got to be.
Yeah, that's the hope.
I'm going to the Brighton game on Boxing Day, and do you know what? I genuinely, even though I know it's going to be rubbish and we're going to lose 1-0, I literally can't wait for it. So I'm very excited. But Glenn, the other thing that's of course happened this week is the FA Cup draw. I think probably there was a lot of boring and all that sort of thing. We got Crystal Palace away. I worked it out. It was the 4th time we played them in the cup competition since January 2015. The last 2 times in the FA Cup, both at St Mary's, they won by the odd goal. Of course, this is up at their place, but I think it was a bit of a sort of reaction, wasn't it?
Absolutely horrendous draw. Probably the worst that you could have, really, because it's just not interesting. If you get one of the huge clubs away from home, then it's like, right, okay, concentrate on the league this season, lads. But it's a big day out, isn't it?
Even bigger now, because Pompey are playing Spurs at the same time in London. That's going to be interesting.
That won't happen. That'll get moved. It's one of the Spurs. I bet Spurs and Pompey will get moved to Sunday or something. But yeah, Palace away is a real for them as well. It's just a boring, rubbish draw, isn't it? And I take it there's no replay. Is it straight to penalties?
God forbid.
Yeah. So
I hope so.
Yeah, we got to go up there and give it a go, but it's not the most appetising of draws from the
it's a dreadful
from the
trip.
outside.
It's a dreadful trip. It's
a
dreadful ground.
Apparently the train strike as well. That day.
But to be fair, you've got the FL Cup at least. The fact that you'll hopefully will dispatch Lincoln, hopefully relatively comfortably, and
a Palace out of that, Alfie, because we'll probably get them in the next round.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. I have to check, but you can, should the worst happen at Palace and you do get beat in the FA Cup, you've still got the chance of going deep into a cup competition, and then you can focus on the league. So it's a shame that it's sort of come to that, but I'm not going to be particularly dismayed at the result at Selhurst Park, whatever happens.
Yeah, no, totally right. Well, we should quickly mention the Saints B team as well, who beat Colchester United 7-1 on Friday evening in the Premier League Cup. Those in attendance included Saints manager Nathan Jones. Briefly, I think you were there, Alfie, were you?
I was not. I was ill, but my colleague was.
Oh, right.
Unfortunately.
There you go. But 7-1, and then the.
But look, I don't know what you want to know about it, but the team was the under-16s team basically. There were 3 debutants. All of the B teams under 18s were playing in the FA Youth Cup, which they eventually, I don't know if you've got there, just managed to sneak.
Have 3-2 Dominic Ballard. Yeah.
So it was an unbelievable achievement. To be fair, 7-1 with a 9 out of 10 rotated team,
and Willie Caballero.
Who got himself an assist. He was 26 years older than his defender.
It's good to have a bit of experience in the team.
Exactly. And as Alfie mentioned, the under-18s beat Coventry City 3-2 in the FA Youth Cup, thanks to a 120-minute winner from the ever-prolific Dominic Ballard. Just finally, the women's team, great 1-1 draw against top-of-the-table London City Lionesses this past weekend as well. If my research is correct, and I took it directly from Alfie House's Twitter feed, so I'll trust it's right. That's 9 games unbeaten in the Women's Championship for the team now, so massive credit to them for that. The club also announced this week that there's an opportunity to support them for free against Tottenham Hotspur on the 18th of December in the Conti Cup. No relation to Antonio Conte, I understand. To find out more, just go to southamptonfc.com, where you'll find all the details, including how to register and claim those free tickets. Okay, that's it for this week's episode. Don't forget that you can follow Total Saints Podcast on Facebook and Twitter. It's just at Total Saints Pod. There's also our website, totalsaints.co.uk, which includes a link to our online shop, Total Saints Icons. We're also on Patreon, where you can support the podcast with a monthly contribution. Just visit patreon.com, which is Patreon/Total Saints Podcast. We have 4 tiers, ranging from £5 to £20 per month. Each comes with their own perks, including weekly shout-outs for those patrons in our Francis Benali or Mick Shannon tiers. On that basis, a big thank you to Dave Melton, Mark Atkins and Matt Hall in the Francis Benali tier, and also to Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Nick Kingston, Phil Cook, Matt Rose, Nick Reed, and of course, Ed in our Mick Shannon tier. A quick reminder to all active TSP patrons that we'll be running a pre-Christmas TSP VIP event on Thursday, the 15th of December at 7:30 p.m. Instructions on how to access that are in your Patreon inboxes. Hope to see a few over there. In the meantime, my thanks to Alfie, Glenn and Ed. Martin will be back next Sunday, the 11th, with the latest World Cup updates and opinions and reaction to that England versus France game. Until then, thank you for listening. Catch you all soon and come on England.